Hey everyone, my name is Isaac Mulvihill. I'm an executive vice president at Delos, primarily in charge of operating and running our product team. But we do a lot of different work from a commercial development perspective, whether that's evaluating different products and solutions to deploy into the indoor environment for health and well-being purposes, or actually developing our own products where we see the opportunity to do so. So really excited to have the opportunity to present some of the work that we're doing today. Ultimately, as many people know, Delos is best known for its development of the well building standard, a standard which essentially codifies best practices indoors to achieve outcomes of healthier people. Right now, we're actually just over about 5 billion square feet in registrations and certifications. And much like LEED was built for environmental sustainability purposes, Delos and the well building standard is really focused on human sustainability. Now, the human sustainability movement is really built on the shoulders of the environmental sustainability movement. So really important to merge these two concepts, oftentimes concepts that seem like they're contradictory to one another. A great example can just be increased ventilation rates, often thought to increase energy consumption rates. But the reality is we can merge these to complement one another. And that especially comes from smart building technology, which we're going to discuss a little bit more today. But again, Delos is best known for its development of the well building standard. We also have a well living lab located on the campus of the Mayo Clinic. This is a collaboration, a founding collaboration with the Mayo Clinic, located in Rochester, Minnesota. And this is where we're really able to evaluate different interventions, different solutions, and their impact on people with a live environment where people are actually operating within these spaces. So everything that Delos does is grounded in research. The research, 10 plus years of research really led us to the development of the standard. Obviously, we continue to advance that research and those initiatives of creating world-class solutions or deploying world-class solutions so we can achieve healthier outcomes in people in the built environment. The last piece of our organization really revolves around our Delos Labs group, which operates in tandem with our commercial group. The Delos Labs group is comprised of numerous PhDs, building scientists, who evaluate products on the market today, innovative products that we might say have a great opportunity to be deployed and really create an impact for health and well-being. And one of the most important areas of research for us is really around air quality. Delos has actually worked with government entities to deploy about 250,000 air purification devices, most of this being in schools, especially driven from the pandemic. That was a reaction, a necessary reaction to the pandemic to make sure that we could reduce aerosolized particles and with the intent of reducing transmission rates. And so in doing that work, we identified that air purification localized to individuals within a building has an incredible value. But at the same time, actually localizing these devices, we can get a lot of information about how a building is operating in conjunction with the people within. And that led us, with all the work that we've done previously, to actually start to develop what we identify as Wellcube. Now, we know today's offices demand more, whether that's sustainability initiatives or whether that's health and well-being initiatives. And we know, again, that indoor air quality is an incredibly important factor in achieving human health and wellness outcomes. It's top of mind for building managers. It's top of mind for employees. It is the number one factor rated as affecting performance. And this often ties to thermal comfort as well. Um, Obviously, temperature is a critical factor in productivity, but air quality in general is really something that can affect our performance, health, and well-being. We also know that ESG initiatives are incredibly important. Just generalizing this to sustainability initiatives, obviously ESG covers so much more. But when we're talking about the E in environmental, or E in ESG, excuse me, from an environmental impact perspective, that's where indoor air quality and in the environmental sustainability initiatives can really come together in a much more impactful way. And we'll discuss that a little bit more. And then, from a really coming out of the pandemic as well, we're seeing a lot more offices request that their employees come back into the office. Obviously, we can be highly productive in a collaborative setting, whether that's hybrid or full time. There is a request to come back to the office, but when employees are coming back, there is an expectation that, improvements have been made into that environment to mind health and well-being when coming back to that space. So really important for us to merge these three concepts together, and that's really what brought us to the development of Wellcube. And Wellcube is really a new approach to creating healthier, more efficient office spaces, more performance-driven office spaces, uh, simply by using a device which provides value to users directly within its vicinity by purifying the air. Not only does that reduce pollens, allergens, carpet fibers, other particles that might be present, at the same time, it also is going to reduce aerosolized particles, which might carry SARS-CoV-2, influenza, and other potentially transmissible viruses. And so this was really a focus by Delos to say, how can we provide value to people directly within the space, but at the same time, be very mindful of the opportunity to create a more sustainable building, a more efficient building, whether that be from an operations perspective, an infrastructure perspective. How do we make the right decisions based on information and data obtained? And again, this is highly contextual to the people in that space. So it's not putting a device on, the ceiling, one or two devices throughout the floor. This is actually placing a device near where people occupy that environment, getting data contextual to people, driving outcomes based on humans within that space. So Wellcube is really a network of air purification devices. And what it has on board is air quality information, temperature, humidity, CO2, TVOC, particulate matter. It also has occupancy sensing, lighting sensing, and noise sensors. Not microphones, so it's not recording anything, but it's really trying to understand what the decibel rate within different spaces is. And that helps drive really information on policy changes, behavioral changes within this space. How can we make spaces more efficient and more productive based on data coming in? Again, it is hyper-localized air purification technology as well. So removing aerosolized particles where they're born, really focused on huddle spaces, conference rooms, areas that we congregate more often, and areas that, their temperature fluctuations can be more significant than an open office space. CO2 can fluctuate far more. So what kind of behavioral changes can we drive with data? Data-driven insights, clearly critical. Having a platform so that people can make decisions based on the incoming information, make appropriate decisions, again, based on data. It's not walking around testing at a single point in time. This is trend-related information that really shows us what's going on across a much longer time horizon, and again, in context to the people who are within that space. And of course, what's going on outside as well. Now, what's really important with the platform in development, again, is the sustainability side to this. There has to be a payback factor. There has to be value in the overall operations of the building. And the greatest value comes from API connectivity. When ingesting this amount of data with the amount of deployed units throughout an office space, there's an incredible opportunity to take that data, communicate it through a building management system, and operate HVAC systems, most notably, in a more efficient capacity. That can be based on occupancy, but really what we can also do is say, let's look at CO2, let's look at particulate matter, let's understand what's going on outside from a temperature and particulate matter perspective, air quality perspective. Let's give this data to the building management system. Let's start to operate these ventilation systems based on what's best, not only for sustainability, but also what's best for people within that to drive performance outcomes. When we're able to do that, buildings are truly operating for the better of the planet and the better of people within those spaces. And that's what we're really excited about with this particular device and the platform that it can offer, driving information to a building operation system. Now, at the same time, that information can be shared with employees. Clearly, there's an emotional and well-being factor here that the more information that we can give to employees within the office space, the more they're going to understand how their environment is operating, and the more that they can choose different spaces, different locations within an office that are conducive to their own performance. We know there's a difference between men and women within an office space from a productivity perspective, temperature especially. And if people are able to find an area that is most conducive to their work environment, that's wonderful for people to have that data and make those choices. So it's really agency in that respect. At the same time, just giving information to facilities managers, even if it's not through a BMS system, what's going on a day-to-day basis with my ventilation systems? Are people in the office? Are we operating the ventilation systems too high and can reduce based on the quantity of people in that space and actually start to save energy, save money, improve our sustainability efforts. A lot of this can actually translate very well into schools. We know there's an older infrastructure and we know upgrades need to be made, but how do you make those decisions without data? That's what we're trying to deliver here in a very dense deployment of devices throughout the space, again, which also provide value to individual people within that indoor environment. So we're really excited about really what this system can do, merging those concepts of sustainability, merging concepts of health and wellness. They do not have to be separate of one another, but the way to do it is to bring data into play, make more informed decisions, and drive automation functionality from that information that's coming in from Cube devices and then through a building management system. So all this, in conclusion, is really driven from years of research that we've had, not only creating the well building standard, identifying what features are important, but again, being built on the shoulders of the sustainability movement and making sure that these concepts are merged together because they need to be as we move forward, build our buildings more efficiently, and even improve Class A, B, and C environments that are currently in operation today. So thank you very much. That's a presentation. Aaron, I'll kick it over to you for any questions.
Awesome. Great presentation, Isaac. I appreciate it. And I appreciate your time. I've physically visited your office. It seems like once every 60 days for the last couple of months,
Nice.
hoping to walk away with a Wellcube. But I'm glad that we got a
Need to
chance
get
to.
you one.
Yeah, exactly. Get me a few. I'm
I'll
glad
get
that
you
we
a
got
few.
a chance to do this. Very impressed with the technology. Just got a couple of quick questions.
Yeah.
The first is, I come to this space from detecting and mitigating radon gas poison in my home. And we've since gotten it mitigated and monitor the real-time indoor air quality. But it was a radon sensor that helped us determine that we had levels, and then we, validated that with a few other tests. Are there any plans to add radon sensors to the Wellcube?
Good question, and actually brings up the focus area initially of what we're doing from a B2B commercial capacity versus consumer. This is really in its first stage, and we're in a beta phase testing period right now, but in its first stage, we'll really be focused in a B2B landscape, commercial buildings. We know that there's a great opportunity to create healthier environments, especially in I mean, class A environments, absolutely, but a class B and C environment as well. How can we upgrade these buildings in a day to have healthier spaces, but also to get data to make better decisions in those environments when people are looking at infrastructure upgrades or even policy decisions. So that's our first step. To answer your question more specifically, our next step would be to go into the consumer world, and even in a commercial capacity or consumer capacity, we would seek to have different SKUs which have different sensor types. Our first SKU, MVP, really focusing on those key uh, data inputs that we know contribute significantly to health and wellness outcomes. They're a little bit more general in terms of particulate matter and CO2, but we can infer so much about the operations of a building from that, especially in a B2B environment, that gathering that information is critical. And obviously, overlaying that with occupancy, noise, what's going on with lighting. We know how important lighting is to health and wellness outcomes. So, to answer your question in a more short capacity, yes, we do want to add different sensor types with different SKUs. That's going to come down the road.
Got it. Got it. But at least it's on the radar, which is great.
Definitely on the
Um,
roadmap.
the theme for our conference this year is climate justice, and especially being here in Baltimore, where asthma is a big thing. Baltimore has the 12th highest rate of asthma cases in the country, and the third highest rate of deaths in the country, specifically in the African American community,
Yeah.
specifically African American women, unfortunately suffer the most from asthma in Baltimore. And there's like no other place in Maryland that has such a an exacerbation as we have here. It sounds like some of the environmental hazards that you're monitoring, PM 2.5 VOCs. Do you see this as a way to maybe reduce asthma triggers? And then the second part of that question is, do you see a pathway to get in this device in K through 12 schools as well?
Yeah, good, really good question. So, short answer is yes. Definitely see this device as a pathway to do so. Not only is it reducing particles in of itself, but it's also seeking to communicate information to operate ventilation systems in a more efficient capacity. Now, even consider if you're watching, what's going on in that environment. When ventilation systems kick on and you see particulate matter actually increasing, let's start to look at better filters, right? We can make those types of decisions if we see ventilation kick on, because this is really, these asthma rates are really driven from outdoor pollution potentially coming indoors, or even people being outside. We can do so much, obviously, in an indoor environment. It's a little bit reduced by comparison to the outdoor spaces, but we still do need to reduce indoor pollution, especially from that which is driven from outdoor pollution. So, again, if we're able to just deploy a unit that has value inherently, but also provide data that can operate a BMS system, ventilation system, more efficiently, get fresh air ventilation, reduce particulates with better filtration from outdoors, that's going to drive much better outcomes from an asthma rate perspective. We actually have had this conversation with those in New York, especially on the northern side of Manhattan, which has very high asthma rates as well. especially because of traffic related pollution and, you know, just simply
You're
gathering
you're
that.
talking about the Bronx, right?
Yeah. Yep. Gathering that data, deploying a solution that can help mitigate pollution within the indoor environment. It's critical. To answer your second question, Aaron, about K through 12, we would love to see that. I think what we're also looking at in the future is actually larger units for K through 12 environments. It's a different setup, right? K through 12 has a much larger open classroom, a little bit more difficult to place one of these per desk. There's an electrical outlet required. So being cognizant of the differences in, how we might go to work in a commercial office versus how kids might go to school in a classroom, a little bit different of a deployment, but still want to keep that same concept of gather data, have a device that's operating to improve indoor air quality. And when we can put it nearer to people, not only are you improving the air quality where it matters most, but you're also getting data contextual to people to make decisions based on people in the building. That's of critical importance.
And so I know I'm not the only one that's it's excited to get their own well cube or a few well cubes. You say you're kind of in beta mode right now. Do you know
Yeah.
when they'll be on store shelves or how people can pre-order or kind of talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, good question. So we're doing testing right now. We're actually testing with a partner, an integration partner, ahead of a potential deployment. So we're we are deployed in an office space. We have actually a lot of units in our office that are running, operating continuously, but we're also deployed in a particular office for a beta run here externally. My expectation is probably, midsummer will be in a much more commercial open market capacity. We want to continue to do testing work and actually want to do a couple pilots before full open commercialization. So my expectation is midsummer, but we are actually taking pilots right now. We're going to get you a few units to pilot. We'll definitely make sure that happens. But if anyone is interested, whether that be a connected via API system or in a more standalone capacity where just obtaining that data, having access to it, analytics and downloadable reports, clearly that's a great value opportunity. So we'd be open to discussion about pilots in that capacity as well.
Awesome. Just a few other questions. Thank you. So in a market like Baltimore, especially Baltimore City, that has more historic architecture than New York and DC combined, actually more historic architecture than any other city in the country. A lot of our buildings, especially the ones that are 75,000 square feet or less, don't have building management systems. So how are you envisioning working in buildings that are a little bit older that don't have BMS?
Yeah, good question. So I think first of all, it's important to acknowledge the reason that we wanted to build a system like this and a distributed network of devices that don't have to, don't require a significant amount of effort to deploy is because there are millions and millions of square feet of commercial office space that are a much older infrastructure that does need to be upgraded. But you can't just go into those buildings, renovate, and just do whatever overnight, to improve those spaces for people and for the environment. So deploying this kind of unit in a day is incredibly valuable to the infrastructure already in existence. That's number one. Number two, it does not have to be connected to a BMS system to get significant value out of this. Great if it is, right? Because you can create those automations, you can have thresholds for, particulate matter, kick on the ventilation system. Let's make sure CO2 gets too high. Let's ventilate, et cetera. But it does not have to be the case. And there's two facets of this. Number one, we want to have an analytics system that helps people understand what's going on in their building, really getting that trend data what should I be doing? How can I improve this particular space because of the information that's coming in? Second, part of the value add with Delos is really the Delos Labs team. The consultative service that we can offer to people in reviewing their data, making suggestions on what should be done based on the information that we're obtaining. Sometimes it's difficult to get just a plethora of data and say, okay, now what exactly do I do here? And we know there's a lot of great systems on the market, but even so, there's so much information that can be contained within these platforms. It's hard to parse through exactly what outcomes I'm seeking, or what outcomes I should actually go deliver. That's where our Delos Labs team can come in and really support from a consultative manner and say, based on this information, here's what we're seeing. And we've done that with schools. We actually did a very large deployment in Kansas, Aaron, that you know of, where our labs team is integral in helping to review that information and say, hey, these are the locations where ventilation needs to be prioritized, or ventilation upgrades need to be prioritized. So again, does not have to be connected to a BMS system. Wonderful if it is, but it doesn't necessarily limit the outcomes that can be driven as well.
Wow, this has been great, Isaac. I appreciate your time, your subject matter expertise, your thought leadership. This has been awesome, and you did a great job. Is there anything that you're going to wake up tomorrow morning and say, "Gosh, I wish I would have mentioned that"? Or you think
I,
you pretty much covered it all?
I think that's going to happen tomorrow morning. I'm sure there's going to be something. No, Aaron, thank you very much. I mean, there is so much obviously to this system, how it operates, and communication. But what matters most is creating healthier spaces, but creating more sustainable spaces. And the best way to do that is to deliver value to people in that space, but also to get data so we can operate more efficiently. That's what we have to do, and we're really excited to start to work with some big commercial providers to do so. So, thank you for hosting this. I think it's an amazing initiative, and looking forward to getting you a few devices and getting some feedback.
I appreciate that, man. I'll be on the lookout.
Awesome.
All right, Isaac, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time.
Thanks, Aaron.
All right, have a good one.